Democracy, but he also has another book out now, Unrigged, How Americans Are Battling Back to Save the Democracy. Welcome, both of you, to the show. How are you today?
Fine. How are you, Santita?
I'm so glad to be with you both because, you know what, we're talking about the vote, and I think it's a really, really big deal. And I came across a story, and I said, you know what, we've got to call these two people like right away because we need to find out what is going on with the system. Michigan is worried that they are not going to be able to handle this surge in voters. They're expecting a record turnout. They're saying that percentage-wise, we will not have seen this many people vote in Michigan and throughout the United States, maybe in more than 100 years. 1908, in terms of the percentages, will be the last time that we will have seen two-thirds of the electorate come out. Let me start with you, Dave Daly, because you have been talking about, you're watching Americans really begin to push back against voter suppression and voter oppression. What do you say about that?
Well, Donald Trump is finally good for something, right? He's going to raise voter turnout in this country.
So we're going to cheer him today. Okay. All right.
This is a really interesting story in Michigan and around the country to be watching because our voter system is simply not prepared for this kind of massive turnout. It can be easily overwhelmed by this kind of turnout. And states have been actively doing things like purging voter rolls and closing precincts in ways that are going to drive up the amount of time it takes you to get to the polls and the amount of time that you have to stay at the polls and vote. And then if you get there and find that your name has been purged and you have to stand in line all that time and then fill out an extra provisional ballot, there's a lot of monkey business happening in a lot of states. A lot of this is designed to drive down turnout, to place obstacles between people and their right to vote. Now, that's not exactly what's going on in Michigan. In Michigan, they passed, via ballot initiative in 2018, a series of really wonderful electoral reforms that include the ability to do absentee ballot with no excuse. So if you can't make it on election day to vote, you can cast an absentee ballot in Michigan. Except the rules on counting absentee ballots in Michigan have not been brought up to date. They are so old and archaic that they don't allow the clerks there to start tabulating or even opening these ballots ahead of time. So you might have this crush of absentee ballots arriving in the state that the clerk can't do anything to actually tabulate ahead of Election Day morning. But just about every other state that allows no excuse absentee balloting allows the clerks to get started on this earlier. It simply makes sense. Michigan could solve this if they simply passed a law bringing themselves up to date with everyone else in the country.
Why aren't they doing that? I mean, are they afraid that early results might leak and it might tip the election? I mean, I'm just trying to come up with something.
You know, that hasn't happened elsewhere. What happened in Michigan is in 2018, you had really a public uprising. And this was Democrats, Republicans, and independents who said that our state government has been stolen from us this entire decade because of radical Republican gerrymandering. In Michigan, in 2010, Republicans took over. It was a redistricting year. In 2011, they redrew all of the state legislative maps in the state of Michigan. And in 2012, more Democratic candidates in the state of Michigan won more votes than Republican candidates. It didn't matter. Democrats held control. It didn't matter because Republicans held control of state government.